This week saw the culmination of the winter session of Parliament with the usual pictures of protests and pandemonium and some limited legislative business getting done. The high point, however, was the discussion that took place on the constitution of the country, the occasion marking completion of 75 years of its working. What caught my attention during the constitution debate was the focus on the First Amendment that happened in 1951 by the government of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted how the First Amendment was an attack on the idea of freedom of expression. Let's understand why the PM said so.
1951 में जबकि चुनी हुई सरकार नहीं थी, उन्होंने ऑर्डिनेंस करके संविधान को बदला और किया क्या? अभिव्यक्ति की आजादी पर हमला कर दिया गया। और ये संविधान निर्माताओं का भी अपमान था।
It's an interesting story of multiple layers of contrasts and ironies. Barely a month after the Constitution was promulgated on January 26, 1950, two cases came up before the Supreme Court of India. One was in connection with the ban on the circulation of a left-leaning magazine called Crossroads. The ban was imposed by the Congress government of the Madras Presidency, fearing a communist takeover in what was effectively the Kerala part of the presidency, as the Crossroads sought to amplify the Marxist narrative. Its editor, Romesh Thapar, who was also the brother of Marxist historian Romesh Thapar, approached the Supreme Court against the ban. Similarly, in Delhi, the Union Territory Administration imposed a censorship on the RSS mouthpiece Organizer following a series of reports that the magazine carried on the migrants' crisis along India's eastern frontier. Refugees were trickling in following anti-Hindu violence in parts of what was then the East Pakistan and is now Bangladesh. The Organizer asked some difficult questions, and the government passed the pre-publication censorship order. The Organizer case too reached the top court, roughly the same time as that of the Crossroads. Both invoked freedom of speech and expression enshrined in Article 19 of the Constitution. The Supreme Court ruled with a majority of 5-1, scrapping both the ban and the censorship, holding that the two publications in no way affected national security, a premise that was used by the Congress governments in their orders. Though given separately, the verdicts were a severe indictment of the Nehru government on the issue of liberty of the press and the idea of the freedom of expression as enshrined as a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a) in the original Constitution. Imagine the hegemony of the Congress under Prime Minister Nehru. The government brought in an ordinance to nullify the effect of the Supreme Court verdicts and followed it up with a proper amendment, which effectively sits as the First Amendment to the Constitution of India. The amendment introduced limitations on the freedom of speech and expression, imposing reasonable restrictions through insertion of Article 19(2) in the Constitution. Look at the irony. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution makes it impossible for the US Congress or even the President to pass any laws that put any kind of restrictions on the freedom of press, making it absolute in America. While in India, that paragon of liberalism, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, under him the First Amendment brought in limitations on the same press. It does not end there. As I mentioned, the Supreme Court decided both the cases with a majority of 5-1 against the Nehru government. The majority judgment in both the cases was authored by Justice M. Patanjali Shastri, and Justice S. Fazal Ali dissented in both cases. Months after the verdicts, the then Chief Justice of India, Justice Kania, died of a heart attack while in office. Nehru government opposed the appointment of the next senior judge, Justice Shastri, who was next in line as per the seniority principle. Prime Minister Nehru acquiesced only after the entire bench of 5 justices threatened to resign in protest. On the other hand, Justice Ali, who had dissented in favor of Nehru government, was bestowed post-retirement sinecures that continued till his death. His term was first extended by a year in the Supreme Court, following which he was appointed the governor of the state of Orissa. After this, he was made the head of the all-important States Reorganizing Commission, an assignment that came with cabinet minister rank. Hold on, it does not end there. Justice Ali was bestowed the Padma Vibhushan, India's second highest civilian award. Guess, in honor of him having dissented in the freedom of press case and then sent for his second gubernatorial stint to Assam, where he died in office in 1959. Talk of committed judiciary. It started with Nehru himself reaching some levels of brazenness under Indira Gandhi, as we know. Remember, it was a caretaker government. The first general elections were yet to be held in 1952. Pandit Nehru had people's heart and mind, but not the mandate yet. History describes Pandit Nehru as impulsive, impatient, impromptu. He was also imperious, an example of which was given by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman when she asked the Congress benches during the same debate in Parliament as to why Bollywood greats Majrooh Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahni were arrested in 1949.
Majrooh Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahni were both jailed in 1949 itself. For what mistakes, sir? During one of the meetings organized for the mill workers in 1949, Majrooh Sultanpuri recited a poem that was written against Jawaharlal Nehru. So that is the level of tolerance, and today we hold our constitution in our hand, go about it and say freedom of speech. There is sense of fear in the country. Majrooh Sultanpuri didn't feel it, Balraj Sahni didn't feel it, but the history repeats when it comes to the Congress party.
Both Sultanpuri and Sahni were part of the left-leaning progressive writers movement. Sultanpuri is credited with converting commercial film songs into sheer poetry. Sahni's film Garam Hawa is still a benchmark of partition filmography. During a workers' protest in Mumbai in 1949, Sultanpuri recited a poem highly critical of Nehru's decision to remain part of the British Commonwealth despite independence. It was not liked, obviously, and an arrest warrant was issued against him. For 2 years, he dodged authorities by going underground. Arrested in 1951, Sultanpuri served a full year in jail as he refused to apologize to Nehru. Similarly, Sahni was lodged in jail for 6 months on charges of inciting violence while participating in a Communist Party rally. Imagine the imperiousness of Nehru that he did not heed his own warning. Back in 1937, Pandit Nehru wrote an essay titled Rashtrapati under the pseudonym of Chanakya. The essay was published in a then Calcutta, now Kolkata-based magazine, The Modern Review. In this essay, Nehru described himself as some triumphant Caesar who might turn dictator with a little twist. There's a reason why he might have felt a bit like Caesar. Nehru had been elected Congress president for the 3rd time that year. The Congress historiography and even hagiography projects that writing of Nehru as a warning to his own people against hero worship. The episodes of the First Amendment and Majrooh Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahni show he forgot his own warning. And you know what? The poem that Sultanpuri had recited had one line which described Nehru as Hitler ka chela. Now imagine the number of times Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been called Hitler, and not just his chela, and yet there are no arrests. Moving on, but staying with the Parliament.